welcome to my channel Near Art History, where I am sitting telling you some art history stories while knitting. Well, at this point already, not just knitting, just basically doing something with my hands, because today I'll be doing, I will be telling you some stories and I'll be continuing on working on one of my jewelry pieces. Yeah, so I skipped a few weeks because I was too lazy, maybe. I don't know why. Well, whatever. But yeah, welcome back, or welcome just to another video. And today we are gonna be talking about actually another sculpture. So I remember that in the last video about Giacometti, I told you that there won't be a lot of there won't be a lot of videos on sculptures, well, I found this document in my computer that I was also preparing for my university, and I was like, well, I remember, I liked this sculpture pretty much when I was preparing the material about him. So I decided, well, why not? He is a very well-known figure in art history and very important also sculpture in art history, but maybe he is not so well known, to like everyone. Yeah, grab your food, drink, whatever you want, and let's dive in straight into our topic today. So as you saw already by the name of the video, today we're gonna be talking about a French sculptor, Jean-Antoine Houdon. Well, I hope that today's video actually won't be so long as it usually is, like it won't be for an hour. But, well, knowing myself, every time that I'm saying it, I will briefly tell you about something, that means that I will tell something for hours. But yeah, so starting from a pretty young age, he was, surrounded by art, even though he was not from a very well-off family. So he was born in Versailles in 1741 in the family of a of a servant. But his father, he was not a servant of directly of a king. He was just a servant of some other noble person in the court of a king. But nevertheless, you see, he was pretty lucky. I mean, not his father, Jean-Antoine himself, starting from a very young age, because in 1749, so as I understood, his father was first a servant of some kind of nobleman, then he became, well, a concierge in one of the Parisian residency that was also some kind of under like king's court or something like that. But, well, basically, that's not so important. The important thing is that this residency in 1749 became a very place where the art school would be situated, and the art school for like best of the best masters of that time. And so Houdon is 8 years old at this point, and this allowed him, to, well, basically grew up in the workshops in the studio of as I said, best of the best sculptors, artists, whatever. So he was basically growing up in the studios and workshops, and he was, well known among all of the masters. And, well, at some point, the thing that I will add here is also important, is that this school was for, like, why best of the best? Because all of the artists that were, well, working there, studying there, they were all winners of Roman prize. And back then, I actually don't know whether there is still such thing or not, but back then, Roman prize, it was like basically a gold medal in Olympics. So it was a very high prize in like French Academy of Art. And well, you would become, like best of the best with this prize. And the thing also with this prize is that after winning, you would be, someone would sponsor you for you to go to Italy and to study there for like few years, because Parisian Academy of Art, they had their own branch, like their own filia in Rome. But yeah, we will mention about this. So as you can see, our little guy was pretty lucky, surrounded by this like genius people who were, people were fascinated about them. At some point, then when he grew up a bit, and he started to study everything, like study art professionally, he was able to go to study to the workshop, to the studio of two other sculptures, and at this point they are also very well-known sculptures, and very well pretty important also figures in art history. So one of them is Pigalle and the other is Slot's, both French sculptures. So at some point he was studying at their workshops. So I think it also helped a bit. And when Houdon was 20-year-old, he actually won himself a Roman prize, and this allowed him to go to Italy to study. And this is basically what happened. So after winning this prize, he got to Italy for 4 years. He was studying there, he was doing his researches and stuff, and he was, as I said, he was studying in French Academy in Rome. So this is like one of the branch of French Academy, well, in France. Here, he had a little bit different point of view how he need to study things, because he was not just going around copying stuff, copying sculptures, paintings, and all of this. He was obviously studying this. He was all obviously admiring and trying to understand what is going on there, how things are done. Just overall seeing all of these originals that he was most probably studying at home. It's very useful and fascinating on its own. And especially he was a very, very big fan of Bernini and Puget. Also both, especially Bernini, is like, the the ceiling of art world. And but the thing with Houdon is that he liked this artist, he was fascinated about them, he liked their works, but he never ever allowed these works to influence his own works, right? And this is, I think, actually the recipe of a very successful artist, because if you will read about all of this, again, top artists that everyone knows, you would see the same picture, that all of them, they were obviously studying because it's normal, it's as it should be, right? When people are getting to academies, they need to understand that, you see, academical education is like, basically, it's like ballet in dancing, right? It's like dressage in equestrian, and this is like a base for you. So a lot of, especially in modern time, a lot of young people don't understand that, and that when they're coming to academies, they are obviously starting to struggle a lot mentally, because you see, academy is not the place where you are allowed to be very creative, because academism as a style has like its own rules that you need to follow to be a successful academist artist, and there's not a lot of room for fantasies, for creativity and stuff. So you see, you have certain subject, you have certain colors, you have certain sizes, everything is already written that you need to follow to be a successful academist, which obviously for especially young people, it's very hard, because now, it's, as you can see, the modern art is more about shapes, it's more about color, it's more about dynamic, it's not about like studying anatomy, composition, and all of this stuff. Like literally everyone can become a contemporary artist without, oh no, you can see, actually, yes, forgot to say that this is my shenanigans that is going on. So it is, I forgot to, not forgot, I'm too lazy to get this down. But in the previous video you saw that I have some of abstract paintings there, and so I was doing them like a few years ago when I was struggling a bit mentally, and I found out that this actually helps, and it actually helped. But back then I remember I was positioning myself as an artist, but now it's, oh my god, no, that was that's not art. This is just as a therapy, great. As art, no. So yeah, but in today's world, if I I was not so unsure in myself, maybe, I don't know how to call it right, and if I would push further all of these things with these paintings, maybe I would become one of the artists in contemporary world, right, in contemporary art. But well, but what I was telling is that if you will read a biography of, as I said, very well-known artist, you would see that all of them had the same like the same philosophy in their life, or I don't know how to call it right. All of them were not under the influence of someone else. They wanted to be their own people, their own artists. And like the same thing, for example, with Monet also was, we know that he had his own ideas, he had his own visions. You know, he knew that he don't want to, well, do things like everyone else. He was fascinated about light and light only throughout his whole life, and he was pushing that, and you see that where he is now, right? Because he never ever allowed anyone to influence him. Same was that we was talking about Hamaso. So yeah, he was a bit forgotten when he died, and he was, well, not so well known. Well, he was well known, but not so appreciated when he was alive in his home country. But still, at the end of the day, we were talking, his works are selling for millions of dollars. You know, it's not like one, two, the highest, what we're talking, 6 million, six something million dollars. So it's like a very nice price, right, for the artwork. And also, as I was telling, that he was studying with one of the most well-known Scandinavian artists, but still at that point he was not allowing anyone to influence him, because he had his own vision, he had his own ideas, and he knew what he wanted to do, right? So same thing here. Oh my god, that won't be a short video. But whatever. Getting back to Houdon and his studies. So as I said, he was admiring, he was looking at all of the sculptures, popular sculptures, so well-known sculptures in Italy, but he was stressing more on his on studying anatomy, and he was spending a lot of the time of anatomy theater, it's called. So basically the anatomy class with all of the sculptures, like stuff like that. And here, so I would highlight one work. Is this work is called écorché. So basically it means skinned man, and well, as you can see, so the point here was to show his skills. This is just a figure that was, well, basically skin. There's no skin. The main accent was done on muscles, on tendons, on bones, and etc., etc. Houdon himself, he liked this work very much, and he put a lot of efforts into creating these works. And he was, even though he had quite a bit of orders for sculpture, but he still tried in his free time to create this écorché in different poses. And well, back then, and I think till these days, this sculpture is very much appreciated by his fellow sculptors and painters, I think, also, because still it's been used for references and stuff like that. Part of this also, we can highlight few of other sculptures that was created for the church Santa Maria degli Angeli, also a very famous Italian church. And for this church, he created, my god, I'm sorry, what I need, he created two of the sculptures of two saints, but unfortunately, till this day now, we have just one of the sculpture, and it's the sculptures of Saint Bruno. And here, well, it's kind of monumental sculpture, and we can see like the art historians who are studying Houdon's art, they're saying that they're seeing in this sculpture the desire, to defend the chambreness of French sculpture, because French sculpture is a little more intimate than than Italian was, at this point in time. So then, at the end of 1768, Houdon, he got back to Paris. He got back home. And at this point, he was accepted to Academy officially, where he showed also a few of his Italian works. But as we saw, he was working in this monumental style. Well, not style, in this like monumental scales. But when he got back home, he decided that he didn't want to continue in this in this field, so he started to search for new forms. Oh, I think I made a mistake again. Oh, no, I didn't. Everything's right. When he came back, the first period of time, he didn't have a lot of orders from his fellow French people, but he was working pretty much a lot for foreigners, for Germans, for Russians, for Russian emperors especially, and just overall for noble people around Europe. I mean, it's fine, but I think as a lot of artists, you want to be recognized on the first place on your in your mother country, right? So a little bit technical aspect here. Like initially, Houdon modeled his sculptures from clay, and then when he was happy with the result that he was getting, he was doing the sculptures in bronze, in marble, in plaster, and etc. He was a very skilled technician in all of these materials that I named. And we also know that sometimes Houdon was working directly on his own, on like from the start to finish on some of the sculptures. Sometimes he would have his students or assistants or whatever. So they would, start the work, and he would just finish, add some kind of distinctive features. So yeah. But the more we'll be talking today about his portrait sculpture, because this is the genre where he showed himself the most. So overall, in 1770s, 1780s, that was the bloom of portrait genre. Well, maybe Houdon decided to that he didn't want to stay away from this and started to do this also, and this blew up actually, till the point that in 1777 he got the title of academician. Is that right? The right word? Well, basically, the first portrait that he made, and it created kind of a resonance, and people was very fascinated about this work. It was the portrait of Denis Diderot. So a lot of you, I think, know, a very famous also French philosopher, and well, not just philosopher, a lot of things also. But basically, whatever. He created this portrait in 1771. And it was customized by nobleman Dmytro Golitsyn. This portrait then was shown in the Salon of 1771, and as I said, it blew up. People were very fascinated about this work. The fact that Diderot already was himself a very well-known figure, not just in France but just overall in Europe. The skillfulness of this portrait. And also, Houdon already had some kind of name. And all of this combined, obviously people were drawn to this sculpture. And this led to, adornment of Houdon in France and in Europe overall. You see, Houdon, he possessed such insight and vigilance that he easily picked up the unique physical and psychological features of people that he was showing, that he were depicting. Another examples of that, we can name the portrait of Gluck, his portrait of Louisa Brongniart, of the portrait of Buffon, the portrait of his wife, of his kids, and etc. However, even though people were fascinated by this, but people, just overall masses who are not who are not professional artists, they were fascinated about this. But people in academy were not so fascinated about this. They were telling that, this is they were a bit against it because because of how truthful the portraits were. Well, I mean, as you can see, they were not idolized. They were not, well, people were not, well, Houdon was not showing people better as they were, which is also one of the features of academies. You need to show everything as like as better as you can. You cannot show the truth, basically. Everything need to be polished. So obviously the his fellow academicians, they were not fond of these works. Nevertheless, Houdon, he was, he had his ideas, he had his visions, and he was not listening to all of them, and he continued to create his own sculpture and in his own way, in his own style. So he was creating the busts of, well, almost every well-known figures that was like staying in Paris back then. So it was, as I said already, Diderot, it was also Rousseau, it was Buffon, it was Franklin, and etc. etc. So he was like, top of the top, as we can say now. But one of the best sculptures that is still considered to be like one of his best is the sculpture of a French writer and philosopher, also I think we can call him Voltaire. This is still considered to be one of his best works, and he, as far as I remember, he was not directly friends with Voltaire, but he saw, Houdon saw Voltaire like a few days prior to Voltaire's death. So he, he was able, to catch up some of the features of Voltaire and was able to then show them in his portrait. And that's why it's so, there's like a realistic portrait, and that's why people were fascinated and still are. Also, we're still fascinated about this portrait. And overall, so he was a very active artist, was working pretty hard. So in a salon of 1777, when he got his title, he presented 20 busts. So, well, quite good, quite a lot, as we can say. You see, things were going on very great for him. And from this point, it was getting even greater. In this period, then, he had one thing that even got him even more famous than he already was. He had a order to create a statue of George Washington. It enlarged like his fame. So now he was famous not just in Europe, but in United States of America also. You may ask how this happened, why George Washington, how is that? So back then, in this period of time, there were a lot of actually Americans in Paris, like very famous, well known, that all of us know now, even outside of US. It's like Benjamin Franklin, is John Paul Jones, is Thomas Jefferson, and etc. All of they were staying at some point in time in Paris, because they were, they were like popularizing their own country at this point and showing that, oh, how great America is now and stuff like this. So basically doing some kind of politics, stuff like that. And Houdon himself, he created the portraits of all of this well-known people, of all of these three men that I named. So he created a portrait of Benjamin Franklin in 1778, of John Paul Jones in 1780, and of Jefferson in 1789. And by recommendation of actually the last one, Jefferson, Houdon, he would go to USA, where he would create this statue of George Washington. And well, it is still there, it's still standing in the capital of, just in the capital in Richmond. But however, so there was like one statue, and Houdon was back then working at another one at equestrian statue, but unfortunately that was never created. Don't know why, to be honest. I don't remember if I saw the information why it was not done or not, but whatever, it wasn't done. This is the most important thing. So yeah, so this statue and the busts of already known Americans they like all of these wars, they expanded the fame of Houdon to American market, also to US market. And yeah, so he didn't stay there for too long. After he ended his work, he came back to France from US, and back at home he got married to a pretty well-off woman with a good money, educated and intelligent woman. Her name was Marie-Ange Cécile Langlois, and with her he would have 3 kids. And as I briefly mentioned, he was also creating portraits of his wife, he was creating portraits of his kids, and one of these portraits, the portraits of his first daughter, Cécile, no, Sabina, I'm sorry, Cécile is his wife. Sabina, he created this portrait in 1788, and it is still considered to be also one of the greatest child portraits in his career. And I mean, I think it's safe to say, actually, just overall in all of the sculptures with children. I think all of you who know history, you know where we are going, what type of events will happen, and where we are now. So this is like the end of 80s, 70s, 80s, the beginning of 90s. So this is the period of time of the Great French Revolution, when Napoleon took the throne, basically. And obviously a lot of customers, of Houdon customers, were, well, killed or whatever. They became well, technically we can say, right, they were victims of this terror. And yeah, but Houdon himself, he was a smart man. We can say that he was some kind of businessman even, because he at first, I think, obviously it affected him, because he basically lost all of his like customers, but he really, well, thought smart, and he was always, at this period of time, he was emphasizing that he was emphasizing his artisanal roots and his excellent skills, and he's shown off that, well, I'm also a really simple guy coming from the family of servants, and I paid my way to the top and stuff like, which was true, but, well, very funny at this point already. But it actually saved him and saved his career and saved his art and everything. And even within this government, he still was on top, because he was still portraying, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, oh my god, 7. He was still portraying like the head of the government. He was, at one point, he created the portrait of Napoleon in 1806, which is also actually a really great portrait. I don't know about you, but I really like it. It's, it's not standard as we used to see him. Very nice one. It was also a portrait of some speakers, like, for example, a speaker, Mirabeau. So he created this portrait earlier in 1791. Thanks to his, well, intelligence, we can say it, and his skills, he stayed at the top, well, pretty much till the end of his life. Then in 1828, in July, 15th of July, he died in Paris. Well, I guess pretty much fine, considering the time, the situation that he relived. But yeah, so this is like the story of his life, brief story, and of his works. Well, maybe this video will be actually short one. Maybe it will be. So yes, I'm sorry that I will, I jumped like this with just this very, very brief and information, like that. I remember I was preparing this with a very, there was the quarantine actually, and I was trying to search everything that is possible, like English sources, some French sources, but yeah, but I didn't have a lot of time. And now also, I'm preparing a little bit different topics, like a little bit bigger topics. So and I just, was watching YouTube, and I just got to my page, and I was like, oh, the last video that I made, it was already like 2 weeks ago. That's not good. So yeah, so I need to post, well, at this point, at least something, but also it's not just something, because I'm pretty sure that not a lot of you heard about Houdon, because he's well known. As I said, if you're an artist, if you're an art historian, like he is a very well-known figure. But if you are maybe not so much into art, you might not know him. The most funny thing is that I was talking with you all of this time, and I made just 3 rows here. 3 rows. This is pathetic, but well, okay. So as I'm always saying, the most important thing for me here is that you find out something new for today, something interesting for you for today, and yeah. So stay tuned for the next videos, and it will be a bit longer, and I promise I will prepare things like a little bit in more details. But yeah, wish you good day, good morning, good evening, good night. Because still, like, a lot of views are actually coming like at 12 like a.m. at like 1, 2 a.m. Like, well, okay. So good night, people, and hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.